Well, hey everybody, welcome to Practical Church Planting, where in 15 minutes or less, we'll give you practical tips, advice, and encouragement to help you plant and grow healthy churches. My name is Brian Drosian, and joining me today is Dylan Dotson.
Yes, and joining me today is Brian Androsian.
Yes, sir. And today we're talking about how to supercharge your daily productivity in ministry.
Right, that sounds great, right? How do we be more productive? And that's not just a gimmick. We're actually going to tell you how to be more productive. And here's the thing. How do you say no to people, for example, when you're in ministry and you feel like you got to do everything to grow the church and meet new people? How do you feel like you actually accomplished something? Because here's what we know. A lot of times in ministry, you can work really hard, but you don't really have anything to show for it always.
Yeah.
Whether you're meeting people, working on message prep, or some guide, leader, whatever. There's a bunch of stuff that you do, but there's not always like tangible evidence. Here's what I did. So that could be a bummer too. So we're going to talk about a block calendar, why it's so important, and how to do it. Now, you may have been familiar with a block calendar. I have been forever, and I was like, there's no way I could do it. Block calendar basically mean, you kind of say, here's how I'm going to spend my entire day throughout the whole week. And I was always like, I'm not organized enough to make this happen. Well, I started actually doing this in January. Shout out to Kerry Newhoff's High Impact Leader course, which is a game changer for me. So definitely recommend that. After you listen to this episode, he walks you through how to do it. So I did it, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm never going back. Why did I not do this before? Yeah. So why should you create a block calendar? Again, block calendar just being, here's how I'm going to spend my day. You're planning your whole day essentially.
Yep, just like broken out by half hour.
By hour, half hour, whatever. Basically, before the day starts, you know where you're spending your time.
Yeah.
Here's why it's so important, and then we'll kind of give some how you can do it. Number one is it makes you more productive. So here's the thing. When you say, this has been really helpful for me, I have an hour to do X. Mm-hmm. What I've found is I'm going to focus because I want to get it done. But I've also found because I know I only have an hour to do it, I often get it done much quicker because I know, let's say it was an hour-long thing, I'll get done in 45 minutes because I know that's the only amount of time I had. I'm a little bit competitive person too, but it's like I'm going to focus, I'm going to do it, and it's made me way more productive.
Yeah, that's good. I think knowing what you're supposed to be doing at each time, if you're coming up on the hour, then it kind of gives you freedom from, we'll talk about this a little bit, but freedom from multitasking,
right? Which
may sound kind of weird, but multitasking, well, great, can also kind of be a huge hindrance to you. If you're trying to do 10 things at once, you end up never getting anything done.
Yeah. So that's, again, it helps you be more productive because you're telling yourself how you're going to use your time.
Yeah.
Instead of your time just kind of going everywhere. Another reason is it helps you feel more accomplished. I said this was really interesting to me when I started doing this, is I would go home in the evening and I would be in a better mood because I felt like I was more productive. A, because I was more productive, but B, because I could look back on my day and say, I actually did stuff. I actually did things, and here's what I did. Here's what I did this week. It was just really nice. Sometimes people ask you, what do you do all day, in ministry? It's like, well, actually, I can actually tell you because here's what I actually did. So it helps you feel more accomplished, which again is a big thing in ministry because you don't always have tangible results.
Yeah, that's. I want to stop on that one because that's a good one, because there's a lot of things in ministry and in church planting that are pretty demoralizing that are going to happen. It just does. And so something like this, like not just here, because my wife's on staff here as well, but before here and other jobs that we're doing less tangible things. She'd ask at the end of the day, like just in conversation, like, what'd you work on today, or what'd you get done in it? And if you can't give like a defined answer, even if you did a lot that day, it doesn't mean you didn't work. But if you can't give a defined answer, it's very demoralizing to be like, I was there all day and I can't even list what I got done, And there's enough, attacks or whatever, negative things that end up happening in ministry to where something like this is very easily avoidable, and this is one way to do it.
So here's another reason, or here's another way why it's so important, is that you get to set your schedule. It's kind of like a budget. Yeah. If you have a budget, you tell your money where to go as opposed to the end of the month not knowing where it is. You actually get to say, at this times I'm doing this, at this times I'm doing this. This goes back to, it allows you to say no to people or to you to be in charge of your schedule. Now, if you haven't launched yet, it's a little bit different. You're kind of like, I got to do everything. Mm-hmm. But after a while, man, if you're going to be productive and doing stuff when you're at your best and not feeling bad for it, when you actually say, here's my schedule, here's the times that I'm going to meet with people, for example. Now, of course, there's exceptions, but generally speaking, like that's when I started doing this calendar thing, I was always like, whenever anyone would want to meet, I would meet with them. And then it kind of like throws everything off. But now I have specific days during my week and times during the week where I will reach out to meet with people during these times first. And most all the time, I get the meeting where I want it. Of course, there's some exceptions, but because I already know when I'm available, when I'm not available, it allows me to say, here's what I'm doing, when I'm doing it. One of the things that's so helpful about this is that when you want to do the things that you're at your best at, when you're at your best, you don't want to just like kind of coast on your gifts. You want to develop your gifts. Yep. And so doing this, saying at this part of the time, so in the morning, a lot of people like, I mean, you're like this too, more productive in the morning. So for me, practically speaking, about 8 to 12 every single day, it's kind of reserved Monday through Thursday, typically for creative things. So sermon prep, blog, podcast, anything where I have to come up with stuff, that's reserved in my calendar. And since it's set, I can then fill other things around it, which has been really helpful.
Yeah, that's good. I think especially when you're talking about meeting with people, not only does it give you kind of the freedom to sometimes say no to a meeting at certain times, but it also gives you the freedom to say yes, because if you have time carved out for a meeting, I think the worst thing is if someone, especially if you're like in ministry, someone wants to meet with you and you end up planning something, but then have to reschedule or cancel or for whatever reason, that isn't good, I mean, and so this way, if you have certain times set apart where, say, at this time each, this day of the week, I'm going to set time aside to meet with somebody, nothing else is going to come up.
Yep.
You don't forget to put something in your calendar or something like that, because that's the time that you set aside for that specifically. So, well, sometimes it gives you freedom from, kind of being bombarded with kind of going every which direction. It also gives you freedom to do the things that are really impactful, like meeting with people.
And it's really helpful too, because like sometimes, you want to meet with someone, you got something 2 to 3 weeks out and you're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to be doing that week.
Yeah.
Well, if you already know, generally speaking, that these times are reserved for this, then it's really easy to know, typically I'm open in these times, so you can actually plan things out in the future, which is helpful as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Another thing that's important with this is that you need to make sure you give yourself breaks. So you can't be like, let's just say 8 to 5, for example. You can't be scheduled from 8 to 5, because then things will go over, like you'll never be done. So for me, for example, like 12 to 1, I have nothing on the calendar. Now, it's not because I eat lunch for an hour, but it's like it allows me to catch up,
right,
that sort of thing. And so you want to have some breaks in your calendar you got to be flexible a little bit. Here's another thing that's really helpful, is that it makes other people respect your time. So maybe the team you're working with or with other people, they'll begin to pick up on, oh, he's like really, not, you want to be loving and gracious. Like if you're, someone's having a hard time, obviously that's different. But we want people to know, like, hey, I don't have all the time in the world to just sit around and not do anything. And especially, a lot of people think people that work at churches go to work at church because that's where lazy people work.
Right.
And so even among other staff or whatever, if they know, hey, he schedules or she schedules their time this way, they're going to be more prepared when they meet with you. They're going to be more respectful of your time. And so you guys will be more productive together, because they know, oh, he's very intentional. She's very intentional with how she spends her time. So I'm not going to waste it.
Yeah, habits like this really rub off on other people.
Yep.
So that's another big thing is, I wouldn't say like it needs to be a requirement, but here, this is something that you started, something that I had done a long time ago in other jobs I'd had in the past, but haven't done in a long time. And so when Dylan started this, it kind of rubbed off on myself and then other staff members as well. And so it kind of creates this more productive culture when the leader does it first. And
it's really helpful too. So now, like, so there's only 4 of us that are here during the week. I mean, people come and go, but there's 4 of us mainly that are here all day, Monday through Thursday, whatever. And even now, it's like we send calendar invites to each other when something's going on, because it's really easy. Like, oh, we're small, we'll just stop and talk about this issue, and this comes up, or when I think about this, but then no one gets anything done because there's always something to talk about. But if you put it on your calendar, okay, at 2:00 today, we're going to talk about this. I'm going to wait until we have time. And that's a big point, is as you are more productive and structured on your time, it'll also make everyone around you like that as well, which is a good benefit. It's also important to know that you can adjust when necessary. So like started this 6 months ago, and I've kind of tweaked things a little bit. I'm going to be tweaking things again. But just generally speaking, here's what I'm going to do, during the week. So again, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 12, I have this going on. Wednesday afternoons, we do a lot of stuff with our team, like development stuff. And Monday afternoons is our staff meeting. And so there's, like where things are, but every once in a while you kind of get in a rhythm. Oh, it's a different season of life that you should change. And here's one other thing I would say, and you can share. I kind of go by what I call like not a fixed calendar, but like I can't even remember the name of it right now. But basically, an adjustably fixed calendar. Here's how it works for me.
Yeah.
The night before, every night, because you're in ministry, you have to have things that are open sometimes. Things last minute come up. Is the night before, I will go into my calendar for the next day and fill any gaps. So typically for me, like Tuesdays and Thursdays, noon on, are open to be flexible to do stuff. And so like Monday night or Wednesday night, I'll go fill in the gaps knowing here's what I got to do. Especially if you're bivocational or you're meeting with a lot of people, you're all over the place, you're a new church, you got a lot of stuff going on. You can't be super rigid, 8 to 5 or whatever, Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday. Here's what I'm doing, because that's just not how ministry works.
Yeah.
But so you have those open times, but the night before, before you get up and start doing work, you already know where you're spending your time. That's what's really helpful, because then when the day comes, you already know what you're doing.
Yeah, that's good. And I think this tool can be used outside of just ministry or just when you're working at the church as well. Like I would never recommend that, you should plan out every hour of the day, especially if you have a family, because no one wants to live in that rigid of a life, but there's some things that if you need to get done, like what I do, I don't really plan out my evenings unless there's a specific thing that needs to be done, because I want to just, be able to hang out with my wife. But my mornings, when, I get up really early in the morning, I like to, on my calendar, I'll put in what to do in the morning too, because it helps avoid the getting up and kind of just like being lazy, because I don't like doing that in the morning. So it's easier to have it all planned out than to that morning have to wake up and be like, well, what was I going to do, or what's actually planned for today? I can just wake up and go. It's ready to go.
It is. Yeah, it's really easy as well.
Yep.
And so again, part of the things that we suggest, doing the stuff that you're best at when you're at your best, like kind of think, okay, when am I most productive in doing those things? A lot of things we do the things that we dread when we're at our best, and then the things that we're at our best at, we just kind of give second fiddle to.
Yep.
But the reality is, if God's gifted you at certain things, you want to develop those gifts. So find out when you're at your best, schedule your day accordingly, adjust as you go. And if you're like me and you're like, well, I'm not very organized, it seems like a lot of work, just try it for a week.
Yeah.
Just try it for a week. Say, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and see how much different it does. It makes in your schedule. And it also helps you not feel bad. So like personal development is a big part. If you're a leader, you're trying to get better. So actually scheduling, hey, I'm going to read for 30 minutes on Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
So when it says it on your calendar, you don't feel guilty for doing it, because you already planned what you're going to do at certain times. And so you feel more productive, you don't feel guilty, and you tell your time where to go as opposed to telling your time telling you. It's just like having a budget.
Yep.
If you tell your money where to go, you'll be a lot better off than having no idea, and then at the end of the month or at the end of the day being like, what did I do all day?
That's a really good point of including scheduling time for personal development, whether that's reading. And you mentioned it before in passing, but also scheduling time for breaks, because I think one of the hardest things is when you have a million things to do throughout the day, is to figure out when to take a break, how long to take a break. You end up not doing it, and breaks. I think everyone would agree break is important throughout the day.
Yep.
And so to actually know when it is, instead of either not taking one or end up kind of burning out throughout the day and taking one way too long and wasting time.
Yep. Yeah. So, hey, thanks for listening to us. Just so you know, however the way you listen to it, you can go to practicalplanting.com and get the show notes for these episodes. If you're listening on iTunes, you can also get the show notes there. And thanks for being with us. As always, you can also go to practicalplanting.com/questions if you have a question or topic you'd like us to talk about in a future episode. And until next time, we'll see you on Practical Church Planning. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Practical Church Planning. Whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Practical Planning, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you like or subscribe or do whatever it's telling you to do or should do on that platform.
And hey, if you are so tired of looking at our ugly faces, but you're not tired of listening to our beautiful voices, then you can find our podcast if you just search Practical Church Planning on iTunes or Google Play. Make sure not to just find it, not just to listen, but to subscribe.
Make sure you subscribe. Brian, tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe.
See you next time.